Reverend Brent A. Brown, Greater Harvest Baptist Church, Baltimore, Maryland. I need you to watch Turn Up the Volume podcast.
I'm David Instone Brewer, and I need you to watch Turn Up the Volume podcast.
My name is Lamika Carroll, and you're watching Turn Up the Volume.
I am Jerome Gay Jr., the author of The Whitewashing of Christianity, and you are tuned in to Turn Up the Volume podcast.
Hey, I'm Nadia. I'm DJ. Hey, I'm Seth. And you're watching Turn Up the Volume. Turn up the volume. Turn up the volume. Turn up. Turn up. Hit the wall. Seth, put the pause.
Hi, I'm Ciara Page, and I am the granddaughter of James Brown, the godfather of soul, and you're watching Turn Up the Volume podcast.
Next on Turn Up the Volume podcast.
And my mom would go to every last one of the concerts. It was one time my mom had a t-shirt she balled up and threw it on the stage, and on the inside of the shirt it said "Sorry, Dad." And James Brown, of course, he had security take her off, but he didn't really take her out. He took her to the back, and so they had a relationship to the point where he knew she gonna show up, and she would make sure he knew she was there. Yeah. It was plenty of times he knew she was there. It was a story where she brought me. I was a baby, and she took me in the back to see him. Of course, I was a baby. I didn't, but this is a story that he was like, "Give me my grandbaby," Oh. And her expression was like, "How she your grandbaby if I'm not your child?" So I think that I don't know him and how he was. I can only imagine because he was, had that old way of thinking probably. And
What up? Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, as you're watching this podcast. I'm Reverend Deontay Carroll, host of Turn Up the Volume podcast, and today's show is very interesting. I know sometimes I do theological shows and theological topics, biblical topics, and then there are other times where I interview people, and whatever I'm feeling like, that's what I decided to do a show on. That's the power of black ownership, where you own your own stuff. And you can do your own stuff. You can talk about whatever you want, whenever you want. And so today's show, I'm going to be talking to someone who I consider a friend of mine. I've known her for a long time. I can't even tell you how far back her and I go, actually. But first, before I even bring her on, anybody who knows me personally knows from childhood, I am a huge fan of the Godfather of Soul, James Brown. A huge fan. So much so, my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, they helped raise me. My mother worked at night, and so I spent nights at my grandparents' house. My grandfather, anybody who knows Stanley Carroll and all of the Carrolls, these jokers love to dance, even in the 60s and 70s, even to this day in their older age. They're 80 years old, 70, 80 years old, and they will still dance. They love James Brown. They love old school music. They are the life of the party. The Carrolls are always the life of the party. And so anytime James Brown will play at a family function, family reunion, my grandfather is like the smoothest of all of his siblings. And they all would dance and slide and do everything James Brown. And they pass that on to the younger generation. And so those of y'all that know me know that when my grandmother turned 70 some years ago, matter of fact, her birthday is coming up soon. We threw her a surprise birthday party, and I did a whole about 12 to 13 minute James Brown set. I had the wig, suit, shoes, everything. And so last year, a couple months ago, I interviewed one of James Brown's daughters, Deanna Brown Thomas. Y'all go back and look on my archives, and y'all see that interview. But today, I have another James Brown family member that I'm so glad to have on the show. She is, and I don't even think nobody uses this term in their family, but sometimes people will take on titles when somebody else calls them. So I want her to take this title on from now on as she goes and maneuvers out in her life. I have with me the goddaughter of soul, Ciara Page. Welcome, Ciara.
I love it. I love it. Goddaughter of soul.
God, the granddaughter of soul. Right? Did I say
Granddaughter
goddaughter?
of soul.
The
Okay.
granddaughter of soul. The granddaughter of soul. And as you all get to know her, you'll see why I call her the granddaughter of soul. So first of all, Ciara, welcome to Turn Up the Volume podcast. I know you have been an avid supporter of my podcast. You and I talk all the time. First of all, let's break some ground. How long have you and I actually known each other? And then what made you say, yes, Deontay, I will come on your show to talk about intimate moments of not just your grandfather, but your mother?
Well, Dante, I don't know how long we've known each other. It's been
A
I
minute.
think it's been well over. My mom passed in 2013, so I think it's been well over about 7 years. I think I'm not totally sure.
Yeah.
I just know that you've been active. We've been active with interacting with each other for that long, and so I'm so happy that I have gotten to know you, and you know we connect. And the reason I decided to come on the show and wanted to share my some intimate moments with my family or just my life period is because I love your platform. I've watched the interviews. I feel like you are a fair interviewer and you are exciting. And also, I think that our connection with Christ is also a big part of it. No, honestly, and so I feel comfortable coming on here talking to you.
No, you ain't gonna do this show. You ain't gonna do this.
Oh man, go
You ain't
on.
gonna do this. You ain't gonna do this. No. Okay. So look. So first, tell us who you are, where you were born, where you're from, and what exactly is your connection to James Brown.
Okay, of course, my name is Ciara Page, and I am from Houston, Texas. My mother is LaRonda Pettit, but before she passed away, she made sure she adjusted that to LaRonda Brown. She was married at the time. I am a mother of one. I am a wife. I I have one sister. I have two nephews and a niece who are also a part of James Brown's legacy. So I'm sorry, I didn't get to that part. My mom is James Brown's oldest daughter. She's the second born, and her name was LaRonda. And again, we were raised here in Houston. And what else would you like to know about wonderful Ciara?
Look. So all right. So we gonna dive into more of that. You can go into detail about more of who
Okay.
you are. But for some who may be watching this, they may have never heard of your mother, LaRonda. And because most times a lot of the fans and people who kind of do their history or research on James Brown, they always see Deanna, your aunt. They may have Yama, even Daryl, who played in your grandfather's band. But just to put away any doubt for those who are watching this and maybe stumbling across this, true or false, did your mother have to undergo at any point in her life a DNA test to, I guess, validate that she is James Brown's daughter, and what were those results, if you don't mind sharing, just to
Yes,
put anything to rest?
yes, we did have to. My mom had to, of course, do a DNA test. Once my grandfather passed away, she was able to get a DNA test done, and which proved that she was 99.99% his child. She's always known that. He knew that. Everyone knew that. And and so that was able to be recognized in the court. I mean, honestly, if you look on Wikipedia and you look up James Brown and you look up his kids, LaRonda Pettit is one of the ones that's listed.
And I'm gonna say this to people that might not know that your mother and I were actually friends on Facebook before she passed. Because I was like, yo, who? Because I was trying to find out who was who, for the longest period of time. And yeah, and so one of the favorite pictures that I had seen of your mother was, I think it was a picture that she put of her and your dad, and they look smack alike. Like this is undeniable. The part above the mouth, under the nose, and then the fingers, and then the eyebrows. I said, "There's no doubt in my mind. This has got to be James Brown's daughter. Like, I don't care what nobody says." And so that was one of my favorite pictures. And so, I think it was after your grandfather passed away. I was trying to figure out who's who, find out who's who on social media and all the other kind of stuff. And then me and your mom had connected, and then I saw you, and then you and I connected and things like that.
Right.
And so I just went on like this scavenger hunt, like who was all of these kids? Because I know James Brown, I'm a fan, but who were all of these kids? And for me, it was just like at that point, everything else was history between you and I, and then I ended up connected with your aunt and things of that nature. But listen, you are the granddaughter of one of the greatest entertainers of all time, the Godfather Soul, James Brown, right?
That's
and
true.
Some people who know you or may follow you, they know that you are his granddaughter because sometimes you'll mention him and have references about your mom and things of that nature. But now you are literally beginning to make more of a public presence in a different kind of way. And just the other day, you did, I want to say it was your first radio interview, and I was just blown away. I was blown away because I said to myself, I said, Lord, if I would have known she was into stuff like this, you would have been on a long time ago. And so I was just happy to see you kind of come out, because you and I have talked, over the years, messages and things like that. And so you and I have talked about certain things here and there, but just to see you come out publicly and to start talking about these things, now that you're making this public appearance in this kind of way, I guess the question now is why now? And what has transpired in your life to make you say now is the time to start talking?
Well, so recently, I talked to my sister a lot, and it's been on my heart forever to step out and do things to carry on the legacy. And when a lot of times with my family, the James Brown, with our family, we're thinking about James Brown's legacy. And I always want to represent in the right way. And I don't believe Ciara pre 2021 was ready to represent the legacy in that manner. And I say that because my life was different. Now I'm more settled and, just settled in life, period. I'm a mother, I'm a wife. I have things that requires me to carry myself or carry the torch in a certain way, and I'm gonna be completely transparent about that. I couldn't be that open and public about certain things if I still was hanging out every night or things like that. And I hope I'm not being too transparent, but that's
No,
the
you're good.
reality. You don't want to tarnish something from a respected brand. And then also, I thought about my mom and her story. I have these journals and these recordings that she's left, and she's talking about her life. And I always promised myself that I would write her book. And so now, okay, Ciara, sit down and start getting this together. Start putting it together, because as the time goes, I'm going to, it starts to fade. She becomes a distant memory, and I don't want her to be a memory. I don't want her to. She's gonna always be a memory, but I don't want her voice to go unheard. And that was a big thing. And so now it's just time for me to be her daughter, and I am her oldest daughter. So it's time that I get out there and not be scared of criticism from family or the public. And it's just, I think it's just time. It's 2023. I mean, my mom's been dead almost 10 years. This year will be 10.
Yeah, my condolences formally in a public way to you about your mom and even your granddad. And I think you lost the aunt too not that long ago, Venetia Brown. So condolences to you in those losses. So currently you're writing a book, using your mom's stories, journals she left behind and things of that nature. You've already established that she's the oldest daughter, correct? You said she's the oldest daughter, James Brown.
She's the oldest daughter.
Okay, and where do you fall in terms? How many grandchildren does James Brown have, and where do you fall in terms of the number of oldest to youngest?
I believe I'm the second oldest granddaughter. So
Wow.
we have, I think it's 16 grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Tanya is the oldest, which is Uncle Teddy's um, daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And then Uncle Teddy's daughter, which is Tanya. Then Anyama has two children. And then Deanna has one. And again, my mom has two. Aunt Jeanette has four. Uncle Michael has one. And who am I missing? Aunt Cinnamon has two.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Uncle Terry has two also. Uncle Terry has two. So
Does
I
Daryl
am,
have any kids?
so when you ask about the children, I'm going off of DNA
Oh, okay.
proven children.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
when it comes to, not, nothing against that, but I'm just, the DNA proven children. Those are the ones I was counting. And I am the second oldest granddaughter. I don't know if Uncle Terry's son, one of his sons is older than me, but I think I'm the second oldest granddaughter, truthfully.
Okay.
I
So,
think I'm second oldest.
so I'm pretty sure your mother shared stories with you about, her dad, her mom, or what have you. How did her mother, your grandmother, how did her and James Brown meet? Was this a long term relationship, short term? How did they meet?
Look, so my grandmother was a fox in her day. I'm not
Okay.
kidding her. She was a fox. But from what I gathered,
Uh-huh.
she met James Brown at a concert, which was typical back then. But they met at a concert, and they carried on for a little while here in Houston. But my grandmother was no nonsense, and some of the things that my granddaddy was tried to do, she wasn't going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't take long. She was done. She did not pursue James Brown for any type of compensation, no help, no anything. She took care of her child by herself. She didn't want anything to do with James Brown.
And even as a child, I guess now that you say that, what was the relationship like between your mother and her father, James Brown? Was there any kind of relationship? Was it kind of touch and go in passing? Did he acknowledge her as a daughter? What was their relationship like?
So, as a child, I remember my mom. We would look at. I remember it was a concert, and I really don't think it was a concert. I think it was the movie Rocky, and he was
Mm-hmm.
singing "Living in
Live in
America,"
America.
and she'd say, "That's your granddaddy," and she would always do that. My daddy on TV. Look at your granddaddy. Look at your granddaddy, and I'd be like, I didn't ever, I was young. I didn't pay no never mind to it, but I knew, oh, my mama said, that's my granddaddy. That's my granddaddy. And I remember I had an aunt, what we call her Aunt Fanny. She wasn't really James Brown's sister, but she was like his god sister. And Aunt Fanny, anytime Granddad would do his concerts, she traveled around and did his memorabilials and stuff like that, his little trinkets, and she would sell them. But every time she came to Houston, she made sure she stayed with us. And my mom would go to every last one of the concerts. Um, it was one time my mom had a t-shirt she balled up and threw it on the stage, um and on the inside of the shirt it said "Sorry, Dad." And James Brown, of course, he had security take her off, but he didn't really take her out. He took her to the back, and so they had a relationship to the point where he knew she gonna show up, and she would make sure he knew she was there. It
Yeah.
was plenty of times he knew she was there. It was a story where she brought me. I was a baby, and she took me in the back to see him. Of course, I was a baby. I didn't, But this is a story that he was like, "Give me my grandbaby,"
Oh.
And her expression was like, "How's she your grandbaby if I'm not your child?" So
Oh.
I don't know him and how he was. I can only imagine because he was, had that old way of thinking probably. And so, but their relationship, she made sure she let it be known. I remember when I was in middle school. They was getting ready for the James Brown birthday bash, which they do every year. Now they're doing it on like a block party. Back then in 19, I think that was 1990. It probably was 95. I think I was like 14 or 15. And no, I had to be like 14. So it was like 93. My mom, when I got out of school, me and my mom got on the road, and we drove to Augusta, Georgia.
Wow.
We drove to Augusta. That was a long ride. We drove to Augusta, Georgia, listening to Joe,
Joe.
listening to Joe
Listen
all
to
the way
Joe.
there. That was her jam. So anyway, we drove down, and when we got there, my mom thought that because she drove all the way from Texas, she would be received with open heart. She got there, and we Indiana. I met Indiana for the first time. I met Anyama for the first time. Anyama was very young at the time. I met my cousin Tanya. Tanya was the most accepting. Her and my mom look just alike. They look like twins. Um, and I remember myself trying to go in the back so that I can meet my grandfather. And one of his workers told me I couldn't go back there. I was crushed. My feelings was hurt. The next day, me and my mom, we were down. We went to the radio station that they had downtown, in Augusta, and my Aunt Deanna was there working. And I remember my mom went and bought her a bottle of water or something to that nature. I can't remember exactly. I think it was a bottle of water, and she had me take it in. My granddad just so happened to be there at that day. And I walked by him. I didn't say anything. I think I was nervous. I was 14, but that was my first time really being in his presence. And again, I was like, I should have took that opportunity, but you're 14 years old. What opportunity do you really have? You
Yeah.
know, and so, but those were a couple of the memories we had. But he knew who she was.
Listen, listen. And your mother, I remember certain things about her on social media, and she always made me laugh. One, and she had someone like your grandfather. She had this presence about her where you were, if she walked in the room, you could tell she was gonna let you know that she was in the room.
Yes.
And I can tell that she kind of got that from him. And even when I interact with you, you kind of got that same kind of demeanor. Like you gonna know when Ciara in the room or when she online or when she gonna say something because she gonna say what she gotta say and it's gonna be that. It could be wrong as two left shoes. Ciara gonna stand on whatever she believes. And you get that from your mother and your grandfather. I noticed that, and so we know about James Brown, but tell us about your mother. Um, when was she born? You know. Tell us a little bit about your mother, Peaches. That's a nickname, right? Tell us about Peaches.
Peaches.
Yeah.
So my mom, Peaches, she was born in Houston. She was born in 1961. So she passed away when she was 52, very young. My mom, uh, she she was full of life. She loved family. She loved family. She was raised by her aunt and uncle. Um, they raised her because her mom, my grandmother Ruby, she passed away when my mom was very young. But my grandparents did not allow my mom to feel as if she didn't have the support.
And these your
Um,
grandparents, right? These are
those are my
okay.
grandparents, Johnny and Cora Brooks. Um, they they made sure she had everything. Bought her houses, cars. She was spoiled, and she was very vocal. Her mouth would always get her in trouble, from a child all the way up until, oh my God, like no, for real. I think even as she got as older, and it's just like her mouth was always doing something, and so I do have that from my mom. Very raw, very opinionated. I try to dial it back sometimes as I get older because sometimes I just like, okay, we're in a different time now. Let me try not to be too vocal. But my mom made sure you knew who she was. She always let people know that she was the daughter of James Brown, Godfather of Soul. She didn't care who she was talking to. I remember meeting um, Babyface, all these people we met. I've never been starstruck behind nobody, but because I was like, that's my grandfather, Godfather of Soul. But my mom was definitely, she loved her family. With her mom, she had three brothers. She's the only girl. And so on the James Brown side, being that she had sisters, she was so happy to have sisters. She loved the idea that she was the oldest sister.
I
Um,
bet. I bet.
but the as I when once you after I did my interview Saturday and I talked to after I spoke with you, what I realized, it wasn't, she was longing for their relationship with her father. My grandfather, he did everything and anything for my mom. But that biological father that she wanted, which was James Brown, she longed for that, but more so she longed to be accepted by her siblings. Um, and that's what hurted my mom more than being denied by her father. When you have siblings that know you and they still, I mean, it was times my mom would go to she would tell me about times she would go to Augusta and she would be made to feel less than. And I'm not saying this to go against anybody, but it's just the reality is that we're past it now, but my mom is not here anymore. It took her, it took James Brown to pass away for her to even have the acknowledgement. And so it was just, I think that the sibling love that she thought she would be accepted wasn't what was most hurtful to her. James Brown was one thing, but when your siblings, who you look like, and y'all, you look like, and they act like they, this and that with you, but then, so that was my mom. That was one of my mama's biggest heartbreaks. was the way that her siblings treated her, and it was not good. I didn't, you know, some resentment it just carries.
Yeah. So look, so I have a little girl, and
Hmm.
I can't imagine in my right mind the kind of person that I am. I can't imagine not showing up and being present for her or any of my children. You know,
Right.
um, and so for for your mom, it's kind of clear that there was some pain that she had as relates to not always being able to have or
Access.
access to your grandfather and even access to her siblings and that love and being welcome, even though she had no
Right.
control as to how she got here, type thing. But
Hmm.
does it, let me ask you, and this is more so, I guess, a question for you. Does it ever pain you at times to know that when it came to entertaining strangers, your grandfather showed up on time, present, in meaningful ways. But when it came to engaging your mom as her father and even engaging you as your grandfather, that it wasn't equally matched?
So, in regards to his parenting skills, um, I with my grandfather, I come to. We went on a trip. On one of the pictures where you seen all the girls, they they took a picture together.
Yeah.
On that trip, I realized that my grandfather didn't have. He didn't know. I don't think he truly knew how to be a parent. Um, he didn't. I don't. And I told my mom, and I remember telling her, I said, "Mom, stop feeling like you missed out, because the reality is, Granddad was on the road more than he was with any of the children, even the ones he actually had interaction with. He was an entertainer. So, and then he was abandoned when he was a child. So, can you imagine someone who was abandoned as a child trying to know how to be a parent? When they substituted that love for the stage, he was an entertainer. He had children, but he didn't know how to give that love, that unconditional parental love that a child would need. And then maybe I don't know what his frame of thought was, but maybe he felt that somebody was just trying to get something out of him. So, because I mean, we do that, just people who don't have anything accomplished, you know, regular old men around now, they don't have as nearly as much as entertain in life or whatever, or, publicity as somebody like James Brown, and they won't acknowledge their children either. So again, I think for Granddad, he just was not equipped to really be that parent like that, that doting dad. He didn't have that in him. He was raised in South Carolina, Augusta. That's the country. And not saying anything about the country, but I'm just saying, they have like probably like old ways of thinking. Raised up to be hardworking. And so it's unfortunate that he missed out on my mom. I mean, but I'm grateful that who raised her.
Right. Right.
She did not miss out. And I remember having that. I had that back and forth with one of my cousins on the James Brown side, and I had to let her know I had a grandfather. I would have loved to have had a relationship with James Brown, but I had a grandfather that was at graduations, a grandfather that took me to church, a grandfather that told me how to pay my tithes, to pray with me. I had a grandfather.
Come on, granddaddy.
Yeah, I had a grandfather who taught me how to change a tire. Like,
Wow.
I had a grandfather. So,
Wow.
so I don't take anything from my grandfather. I don't envy none of my cousins who knew James Brown, because a lot of times they only knew him when it was time for a picture to be taken at a function. If you get what I'm saying, it's not that. And again, it's nothing wrong with him. It's just that's what it is. I had real family ties, and that means more, you know. And so I hate that he missed out on Peaches, because Peaches was a good daughter. I mean, she would have been, you know, she wouldn't have let him down. She used to sing in the choir. Her hair was big like mine. There's a picture back there.
Yeah.
Before she died, she cut it off, but you know, because she couldn't stand this thick James Brown hair, because it sweat out too fast. It don't take long at all.
Oh my goodness. Listen, so I want to know from you as LaRonda's daughter, what is your most memorable moment about your mom? A life lesson, anything. What's your most memorable moment?
Um, I have many life lessons with my mom. My mom was she was I remember my happiest moments is when I was a little girl and we would sing Anita Baker.
Hmm.
She wanted to go on Apollo one time because she felt like I could sing it so good. I was like, Mama, okay. so, so she used to have me singing Anita Baker. That was that's one of those memories that stuck with me, and I try to do it with my niece and the kids. And so that is my first memory of me and my mom. That was our relationship. Our relationship was music and singing. I sung in a choir alongside of my mom. You know, she sung alto, so I thought I was an alto. I don't know. I probably was a soprano. I don't know. I probably messed up my voice trying to be with my mom. So you know that those were the memorable moments. It wasn't always good though. I mean, I can say that my mom struggled. She had a in around 19 around 89 or 90. um, my mom fell into the drug addiction. She fell into drugs. um, and that was something that I remember blaming myself. I blame myself for a lot because I was her only child, and I remember us staying together and staying in. We had an apartment, and one of her friends needed somewhere to stay. She was that friend. She let anybody, you need to come stay with her. That's fine. And I remember that's when her addiction became apparent. And I blamed myself because my mom said, "Hey, Tinker," that's my nickname, Tinker. Tinker, is it okay if such and such come and stay with us for a little while? Because they would have to stay in my room. So she asked me for permission. And I said, "Yeah, mom, that's fine." And you know, I ain't thinking nothing of it. And that's when things just turned really, really bad. And so yeah, she struggled with addiction. She eventually got herself clean. She went to the extreme of moving to um, Boston.
Okay.
She moved to Boston to try to help herself get clean, and then she ended up moving to Arlington, and she ended up beating her addiction. But those were some of my childhood realities that I cannot ignore it because she didn't ignore her own. She made sure she spoke on it, and a lot of that she her a lot of her excuses was she blamed some part of it to James Brown, a big part of it losing her mother at a young age, um, and you know that so that yeah.
It speaks to how important it is to have your parents, mother and father, because sometimes people deal with that differently, you know, and it sounds like your mom had some struggles with that, you
Yeah.
know, but the good thing is she had a moment where she was able to overcome that, you know, and we all have our moments
Right.
where we fall to something or something kind of gets our attention in some way, shape, or form, but it's not the fact that you fail, but it's about how you overcome those moments, and the fact that your mother, even in spite of what she had to go through, all of that hurt, you know, the grief of losing her mother, she was still able to overcome that. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's very powerful. Then listen, December 25th, 2006, I would never forget it. And I'm gonna tell you why, and I'm gonna make you laugh. You know how some people they hop on the bandwagon when somebody passes away, type thing. Listen, I was a James Brown fan before James Brown passed away, and that,
Right.
it was a period where I was heavy into James Brown, to the point to where my favorite James Brown performance ever was him performing on Saturday Night Live. I don't know, the music, the dancing, Bobby Bird, all that was just right in that performance, right? And so I never forget December 25th. I'm gonna tell you where I was when he passed away. I happened to be sleeping with the radio on, and you know sometimes they say don't sleep with the radio and the TV on because that stuff will be playing in your subconscious.
Yep.
And so I slept with the radio on, and I had a dream that somebody said James Brown passed away, and I woke up. I was like, now mind you, this is a period where I'm heavy into James Brown, and so I woke up and sure enough on the radio Christmas morning, they said James Brown passed away Christmas morning or what have you. Mind you, this had to be early in the morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. So I called
Right.
I called my grandmother. Now my grandmother, right now she's about to be, I ain't gonna tell her age, in her late 70s in June.
Oh, that's
And so I called her. I was boohooing, crying. I said, "Mom," I said, "James Brown passed away. He gone, Mom." No, I said, "He gone. He gone." She said, "Boy, who gone? Who gone?" I said, "Mom, James Brown passed away." She cussed me out. Said, "Boy, if you don't get up off my phone, I'm trying to sleep." She cussed me out. I love my grandmama. She's still living. And so
right.
shout out to my grandma Elma.
Shout out.
So December 25th, your grandfather passed away. Walk us through, where were you and your mother when you found out he passed away? What was your reaction? And kind of just paint the picture as to how that day was for you all.
So when Granddad passed away, I was at home. My mom was in the hospital. Um, she suffered with asthma real bad, so she was in the hospital every holiday time. She was in the hospital. So when her dad died, she was in the hospital at that time, and I I was shocked because I didn't. I think at that time I was just getting to know Daryl.
Okay.
And so, like, literally, I was just getting to know Daryl and talking to him, and then Granddad had passed away. So, yeah, that day I was at home, and she called me, and it was on the news and everything on CNN or one of them stations, and it was just on there. And I don't know, I don't. It wasn't. I didn't feel how I felt when I lost my grandfather, the one that
Got
raised
you.
my mom.
Got you.
It was a disconnect.
Mm.
It was a big disconnect, and so and I didn't feel how I felt when I lost my grandmother. So it was just a disconnect. I mean, but I was sad for my mom
Yeah.
because at the end, regardless, that's still her daddy. She didn't care what he did. That was her daddy. And it's like that chapter had, I think that chapter had, it felt like that chapter had ended of trying to uh, get him to acknowledge who she is.
Mm.
It seemed like that chapter had ended, but the chapter still didn't end because she still had to fight to be acknowledged. But she just wasn't able to prove to him what he already knew,
Yeah.
and to
Yeah.
see how he would. I think so that so yeah, that when he passed away, it was like for me, it was like, oh wow, I'm sorry, mom. She wanted to go to the funeral. I said no.
Oh.
Yeah, I told her no. I said, listen, we had to deal with stuff because I looked at it like this. We had to deal with stuff with my grandparents that was here. So I felt like if we had to deal with stuff with my grandparents that was here, I don't know what it's gonna be with this. Remember, remember my experience was we drove 15 hours only for them to act like we didn't exist.
Wow.
So I said, I'm sorry, Mom. We're not going to Augusta, Georgia for this. I'm sorry. And it hurt her. She wanted to visit her dad's grave. But she couldn't visit her dad's grave because why? He owned Deanna property.
Is that what he is now? He's his final resting place.
That's where he's resting now. I don't know if that's gonna be the final, but
Okay.
that's where he been.
Okay. So you all never went to the funeral that was televised. You said, which by the way, I thought was very. I've never seen nothing like it. When I saw it, I saw it on the news. The the memorial service, because I think they had three. I think they had a private one. They had one at the Apollo, and then this one at the James Brown Arena. And this is the one that I saw with MC Hammer. Everybody was there. So you all weren't there at this particular.
We wasn't at none of them.
None of them. Gotcha. Gotcha. So do you think, or was there ever a moment, even before your mom passed away, that she had any closure, even though he had passed away, did she have any closure within herself about her dad's relationship between her and her dad?
She had no closure with none of it. Um, oh, she did. With in regards to granddad, no, she didn't have any closure. I think it did help a little bit once all the DNA proven children kind of started having a relationship. But as far as with her and James Brown, no, she did not have closure with that. She wanted a relationship with her dad. Um, in regards to and then she had, she was able to get close to siblings. So she was able to get close to siblings that also was not that was also DNA proven.
Okay.
So that was a little bit of closure. She was able to have that bond with them of also having that same kind of similar story. Not same, but similar.
December 27, 2013, about 7 years later, after your grandfather passed away, your mom passed away. Um, Walk us through that if you don't mind. What was it like? Her final moments? Like, was she ill? Was she doing okay? What was it like?
So, okay, so what happened? Okay, so December 8th was my mom's birthday. Is my mom's birthday. She invited my sister and I and my nephew. We went over to her house to eat gumbo or whatever for her birthday.
Gumbo.
On December 8th, she was in the hospital. I mean, she was at home on December. So my mom was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But she hates being in the hospital. She was in the hospital before her birthday. So before December 8th, she was in the hospital. She checked her. She got released from the hospital and came home. She had pneumonia in her lungs. So, but that's very common for people who have asthma, whatever. So she had pneumonia in her lungs, and I guess she thought she was doing better enough to be able to come home. So she came home. So December 8th for her birthday, we went over her house, ate. Um, that was on a Sunday. December 9th, I talked to my mom every morning, and so I called her, but she didn't answer. So I thought that was odd. But so my stepdad, he called me. He said, "Hey, you talked to your mom today?" I was like, "No." He said, "Well, I've been trying to reach her. Do you mind going by the house?" I went to the house, but he had already beat me there. And my mom was in the house, sitting on the side of the bed, and couldn't hardly breathe. Take a very short breath, trying to do a treatment, trying to do something to get herself together, but she couldn't. So the ambulance came, took her to the hospital. They immediately admitted her in the hospital. They put her on. They went ahead and I guess put her to sleep, or you know, put her in induced coma, or whatever, with the drug to put her to sleep. And so they can, because she had a right lung collapse. So her lung had collapsed. So they had to put her in the hospital. I mean, they had to put a bag in her to try to boost that lung and try to get her some help to recover that lung. So she was in that state probably. So the first night they said is the most critical. And that first night, I think my stepdad had just left. She flatlined.
Mm.
And so they came in and did the chest compressions and revived her. And so I made it my business to stay there. So I stayed at the hospital with my mom, um, and she was in the hospital for 3 weeks. During that time, because she flatlined, her liver had to get itself together, regenerate, and do what it needs to do. And then her her kidneys failed. So they was hoping they would get back, but they didn't. And so while she was under in a medically induced coma, they were doing dialysis on her, and with the dialysis, I think it was a lot. But after like a week or two or so, I was like, hey, can y'all kind of see if she's, see what's going on? They did tests, her brain function, everything was good. And they kind of weaned her off of what was bring the propofol down a little bit so she could wake up. And she would wake up and I would sit there and I would talk to her. I go to work in the morning, come back on my lunch, and then come back after I got off work. In the morning I would look at the minister. We look at TV, just so she'll have that on, have people FaceTime so they could see her and everything. And eventually I thought she was doing better because she was awake. I thought she was doing better, but that last day of the dialysis, I kind of seen her diminishing a little bit. Her blood pressure was dropping a little more, and so by the time that night came, I think she flatlined. Oh my God, she flatlined. I think I let them bring her back at least 7 times.
Wow.
That was a lot, and I think the honor and honestly, the only reason why I was doing that was because my little sister was not able to be in the ICU room. Well, she could be in the ICU room, but she wasn't able to come like me because she has a 9-month-old.
Yeah.
My nephew can't go into the ICU room, and so I wanted my sister to be there before we made that final call. And so my stepdad came and said, hey, and I looked in that room and I said she was already gone. I just said, I'm, just, not, don't do it no more. But yeah, so it was a hard day that day, because I really thought that she was recovering. But I think that's the power of medication, honestly.
Yeah. Did you reach out to any of her siblings on the James Brown side immediately? Like, what was their response? Did they come to the funeral? Were they opening up, open arms with you? Anything you need, we got you. Like, what was their response?
So I did inform her siblings that she had passed away. My aunt Deanna, she came to the funeral. Her and my uncle Sean, they
Okay.
did come to the funeral. They actually were coming from there. She goes to St. Thomas every year for her birthday. And when she came back, it was the time for my mom's funeral. They came directly to Houston and came to the funeral, and yeah, but they were the only two that came, which I didn't expect anyone else to go out their way to get there, but they did come to the funeral.
Okay. Okay. 2017, I think that was the year. Get on Up, the movie Get On Up was released. Overall, I enjoyed it. I think, but even to this day, the challenges I had was I struggled with how they bounced around. It wasn't chronologically in order type thing, and in retrospect, I felt like your grandfather, Godfather, so you can't put everything in a 2 hour movie when it comes to him. It probably would have been better for me if they did like the New Edition story. It was, on BET a couple of days and you go into deep into the details and the nuances of his life. But what I would have liked to see in the movie was more detail about your mother, because I noticed your mother wasn't in there. A couple of his other children weren't mentioned in the film. I would have loved to see that and to kind of see, you know, the nuances of that kind of explored a little bit more. But I guess my question to you is, were you and your sister consulted when that film was created or made, and what was your reaction to the film?
I'm trying to fix my face, so
Listen,
listen.
be transparent as you want.
So when the film came out, I was excited to see Granddad's movie being put out there. Of course, I wish that it would have been a little more James Brown. When I say that, he was very raw, and I feel like some of it came in from like a. I feel like some of the movie was more on a. It seemed kind of corny. It didn't seem. It didn't give me. It didn't give me. Like I wish that it was more like a Ray Charles movie.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying?
Got you.
Because his life was a movie. Granddaddy life was a movie.
It was.
And it's like, how do we miss some parts that was so up there? And so it's my wish that they redo the movie.
Okay.
The unfortunate thing is that they had Chadwick and he did a wonderful job. But I don't know how they'll feel about doing another James Brown movie, and and somebody may look at it like Chadwick played James Brown. That's not fair. But again, did you see how they did Whitney Houston movie?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get nobody who was well known to play Whitney Houston. They got somebody who, I don't know who she is, but she was good. That was a great movie. And so I just wish, I didn't expect to have any dealings with the movie. I didn't expect to be acknowledged in the movie, my mom to be acknowledged in the movie. It would have been nice to at least acknowledge all of his wives, because if you follow James Brown, the wife that was most known was Adriana.
Mm-hmm.
That's the wife that passed away. That's the wife who was with him when Living in America came out.
Mm-hmm.
That right there is Deanna's not even her. No. Really, not her. But Adriana is the wife that had she had the big hair and
yeah.
She was the one that I remember growing up. So that was in like the 80s and the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, how do we miss that? But I wish that they would go back and redo it from a more serious standpoint. Not with him coming in, because the beginning seemed very comedic,
Yeah.
It started off like a comedy to me. Honestly, it was just very comedic. But yeah, more so on James Brown, not so much on. It was some things I felt like could have been just done more on a biography type of his autobiography. He was too much of a serious person to be. Yeah.
How did
you? It could be longer than that. How long was Ray Charles' movie?
It was long. It was long.
Well, James Brown, and you know what? And look how they did Ray Charles' movie. Mm-hmm. From beginning to end, it was entertaining the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No. You got it.
No, I was just saying Jamie Foxx is a good actor, though. So
yeah,
he played that part really well. But yeah.
And we wish him all the best and speedy recovery too. And everything he's going through.
I love me some Jamie.
Two more things about the movie. And it has to do around domestic violence. What was your reaction to that? Because if we look, your grandfather is so famous. One of the most funniest comedic things about him, he was under the influence of something. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. And
that was in the movie.
You know what I'm talking about. And so there's this news clip of your grandfather. I don't know if he was drunk, high, whatever. And he was on the news, and he had the glasses on, and it's this one thing he does when the lady asks him. He says, "You look good, you sing good, you smell good," and he said, "And make love good." and something she said, and he just goes, "Ha!" And so he just does that laugh, and he's going on this rampage, and it is so hilarious. But we see that we not only is your grandfather, was he a great entertainer, but we see the down moments, or his low moments.
Right.
With the drugs. I don't know if he drunk, but the high speed chase he went on, and then we know that he's had moments, and even when your aunt was on the show, she talked about that those were not the not so proud moments that he had, and she does not condone those moments or what have you. And in the movie, they mention, or we see a moment between him and Dee Dee Brown with domestic violence. How did that make you feel? And I guess, what was your reaction to that?
I don't. Domestic violence is not acceptable. I can say that. In regards to the movie, I I look at things in a perspective a little different. I don't know the backstory. I know what they put out. I know the story that they gave. I don't think that he should have ever put his hand on a woman. I mean, he tried that with my grandmother and it didn't get him nowhere. Got him left. And so I mean, I guess it's safe to say he had somewhat of a little temper. Um, but that, of course, domestic violence is not acceptable on any level, with regards if you're mad or what's going on. But when I seen it, I was like, oh wow, they experienced that too, you know. And so, I mean, I've met Miss Dee Dee. She's a nice woman, and like I said, it's not nice to experience that. And I don't know how much more trauma she experienced. You know, I don't know how someone like Deanna and Yama would literally have to witness that. So that's hard, you know.
Yeah.
But
I read, your aunt wrote a book, Cold Sweat. It was called Cold Sweat, and I read it, and it was a really good book. And she detailed some moments that she witnessed, and I read that book because I think that book came out prior to the film, and so when I saw the movie, it just was like, oh man. But even in that, when we talk about the domestic violence, I think about our time now, 2023, and we know cancel culture is real, and how various men, entertainers, movie stars, artists, they're losing everything left and right because of incidents of sexual assault, rape. You know, we see things that's going on with R. Kelly, you know, with sexual assault and all this other kind of stuff. If your grandfather was still alive, do you think people would try to cancel him now because of?
I don't, you know, they would try anything. I mean, I can't listen. I think that everybody is no one is exempt from cancel culture. They tried to cancel Kevin Hart because he said he didn't want his son to be a certain way. It's his child. So I think that if you don't go with what you desire or what you want, they gonna try to cancel you. So with James Brown? I think they tried to cancel James Brown at one point in his career. When he was, I think when he went to the White House and he, what president was it?
Nixon,
exactly.
I think it was.
That, the black folks canceled him then.
Yeah.
So he's been canceled before. So, but you couldn't count him out because, you know, that's just like R. Kelly. R. Kelly is canceled. Listen, he canceled to everybody else. But when it comes to the music, it's still getting played. It's not. So it's like, who are you? Who are, you know? What does cancel culture really do? Because if, someone who's already created their legacy, it's hard to cancel them.
Yeah.
It's hard to cancel them.
So here you are. Your granddad, your mom, your grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Brooks, are no longer here. And when I look at you, I look at somebody that has a load of a legacy that she has to carry out and push and continue to carry out, as well as responsibility in many different shapes and forms. Of your mom, the legacy of your mom and your grandfather, right? Whether you want to acknowledge that or not, or take that responsibility or not, you are literally a part of his offspring. And so you have, in your own way, in your own right, the responsibility to carry out the legacy of both your mom and your grandfather. Now that you, and I know now you're becoming more public about this and doing these kind of forums, and is it safe to say this is your first podcast?
It is.
Bingo! Score. Look at God. Ain't God all right? Say no. But no, does it ever feel like when you were making the decision to start to do this, did it ever feel like this would be a great burden for you, or is this a pleasure, like a joy to do it?
I actually, it seems joyful. It is. There's a lot of joy in it because I'm able to say some things, but the burden come in to try not to say the wrong thing. That's the hard thing because I have to tread light on what I can and cannot say. So, um, you know, and remain respectful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um,
But I love to do this. I wish I could do this full time and be talking to people. I'll probably get canceled though, so I might not need to do it. So that's
look, look, you have aunts, you have uncles who are offspring of James Brown, and you're now rising up. You're rising up, carrying out your mother's legacy, letting the world know who your mother was. She was an offspring of James Brown. She was his daughter, the oldest daughter, what have you. And I know that your mom's relationship at times in the past was not the best with her siblings. But is it safe to say that in 2023, as of this moment, do you have meaningful relationships with your aunts and uncles, or some of them, all of them? And is there any plans for you all to collaborate in any way, shape, or form in the future?
well. For the most part, I have cordial relationships with all of them. One of them is mad at me right now, but I'll pray about it. It'll be all right. But
Ask her,
Lord,
do she care?
listen. Let me tell you something. Listen, we'll talk about that off camera.
Okay.
But for the most part, I do have decent relationships with everyone. My closest relationship is with my cousin, which is Uncle Teddy's daughter, my cousin
Okay.
Tanya, and my Uncle Michael, who lives in California. So those are my two closest relationships. Those are the ones I laugh with and ha with, talk about things that I want and desire of the direction of out the legacy that we are in control of. So it's just that I am able to reach out. Once listen, Indiana. I actually went to Atlanta a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, about 2 months ago, and I took my son. He's very small, but my desire was for him to, even as a little baby, he'll have these pictures to say, "My mama took me here. Oh, that's my papa," or whatever, or that's my auntie. And so I wanted my son to go to Augusta. He don't know what it is. He's too young, but him and Indiana met Zion for the first time, which is my son. And they took a picture. We all took a picture together. We went to the James Brown Museum, and so it's important that my son knows his family. Regardless, it may not always be good. That's still his blood. And so regardless of it, I can't take that from him. My mom wanted me to know these people too. No matter how they treated her, when it came to me, it was a little different. So me and Indiana, she paid my tuition one semester. I was in college. She paid my tuition. I needed to move into an apartment. She gave me the money. She loaned me the money to move in. I paid her back about a couple years later, but She didn't ask me for it back or nothing. So, I mean, it's we have a relationship. We have a relationship. It is what it is.
Listen, so the youngest sibling, James Brown the second. Do you have any relationship with him
Nah,
or his mother, Tommy Ray?
no, we do
Oh,
not talk to her. Um, Little man, I don't know him at all. Um, yeah, no, I don't. My mom was one of the people that try to force that to, hey, I'm your big sister. Mm-mm. Yeah, I don't have a relationship with them. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't welcome a relationship with him, but I don't a relationship with his mom. I don't have no reason to, because he's grown now. If he wants a relationship with his family, he should be able to have. He can have one, I'm sure.
yeah, yeah. So you're writing a book, and I know we about to close out. You're writing a book. Tell us the name of the book. When will it be released? When can we expect it? And what's next for Ciara Page?
So I am writing a book in my mom's honor. The name, what I've come up with, what my mom said she wanted, is The Big Payback. The Big
Okay,
Payback is not about money. It's about surviving.
got you.
It's about overcoming. And so that's what The Big Payback is about. A lot of people are like, oh, she's talking about getting money. Mm-mm, not about that. I my what I have now is a nonprofit. I am trying to still work out some kinks on it, but that's where my heart is to try to help young people overcome situations, um, children who are a product of drug addicted parents, parents who are incarcerated, and so that's my main focus on working with youth. I also, of course, have my own businesses. I do work, but I do have my own business where I make T-shirts. This is one that I made. I make T-shirts. I also um, have a juice business, which is called Bad Habits. My T-shirt business is called Kiddos Creations. I also have. Sorry. Hold on. I'm also working on I want to open a indoor play uh, play center for kids, and I think I got that idea because I got a little baby. So I feel like I want to I want to have that, and just to create my own legacy, and leave something for my son to keep going.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at these days.
Oh,
Also trying to make sure my sister and my niece and nephews, you know, are aware of where they come. My nephews and niece and nephews anyway, where they come from. My sister doesn't talk about James Brown at all. She's
wow.
not like me. You will never catch her interviewing, posting on social media, nothing. She's incognito.
You mentioned before we close, but you mentioned you went to Augusta or you went to Atlanta. You said you went to Atlanta.
Hmm.
Eh, Have you ever been to your grandfather's estate?
I have. My aunt Jeanette took me. I have not been inside the gates.
Okay.
So I went to South Carolina, where his estate is, and I, of course, stood outside the gate, and I had a wow moment because I'm a person that's big on land. And when I seen my granddad's estate, and you, first of all, you can't see the house from the street, but he has acres on acres. And I'm like, wow, you know, it's like, man, we could have had so much if we could have came together in the beginning. We could have done so much more together than fighting against each other at the beginning part when Granddad passed. But I was just really wowed by the property and how beautiful it was. In the front of it, it has the truck that he was trying to escape in. So it has that truck there, and yeah. So I can't wait till I think they're gonna open it up as a museum. So I can't wait till they open it up, and once they do that, I'm going down there just to see inside.
But you were the granddaughter. How come you couldn't get to go in there? Oh, pull that granddaughter card. I'm the granddaughter.
It does not work.
Oh,
It's on it. Hey, it
oh,
only worked for some, not all.
oh, shucks.
Yeah,
Oh,
one day we'll be past that, but I'm not holding my breath on it. I don't need validation for any of it. I know that at one point we was not able to sit at the table. Now we can, because regardless, DNA supersedes everything when it comes to being able to sit at the table on some matters. So I don't need validation of going to, hey, I want to go inside my granddaddy house. Can y'all open the door? Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Last question. What's the one thing that you want the world to know about your mother, LaRonda Brown?
She was a person who just wanted the love from her family. She just wanted love, and that's it. So she wanted to make sure they knew she loved them, and it's videos where she's on her page calling out her sisters, "I love you all." She individually named all of them, and she was just that person. She just wanted to be loved, and that's it.
There you have it, people. Ciara Page, the granddaughter of the Godfather of Soul, James Brown. Listen, do me one more favor. Tell people where they can find you on social media, because you are embarking upon this new territory, this new ground of being out here in social media and sharing your mother's legacy, which ultimately, kind of by default, leads back to James Brown. So tell people where they can find you on these social media streets.
So my private page is really not open, but on Instagram, my name is Just Live Ciara. Just Live Ciara. My business page is Kiddos Creation, KITTOS, KREATIONS, and I have Bad Habits with a Z.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, I'm on Facebook, Ciara Page.
There you go. I got you. I got you. I get. See, well, listen. Thank you so much for coming on here, for spending this time to talk to me, to talk to people that are going to be watching this. It's going to be on social media streets forever. She has officially put in the books her first podcast interview. Yo, I'm so proud. I swear, because she wasn't doing this years ago. She wasn't doing this. She'd talk to me, but in private. But she wasn't doing this years ago, and I'm so proud of her for doing this.
Nah. Hey, Deontay, I also want if people want to go and look at my mom's Facebook, her page is open.
Okay.
Her name is LaRonda Brown on Facebook. So I don't know. You could tag that at some point. LaRonda, LARHONDA, last name Brown.
There you have it. There you have it. Ciara Page, Deontay Carroll. Ciara, don't go nowhere. Let me close out the show. Don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to thank my guest, Ciara Page. Listen, I love y'all. Make sure y'all like, tag, share, and subscribe to the page if you haven't already. YouTube, Facebook, all of that good stuff. I'm going to show y'all where it's at. Follow me. Please follow me on Twitter at Deontay J. Carroll, or one word. Facebook at Deontay J. Carroll Sr. with an apostrophe. Go to YouTube. This is going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on YouTube. I got all my preaching videos, everything up there at Deontay Carroll, no apostrophe. And follow me on Instagram at Deontay Carroll, or one word, no apostrophe. And don't forget to go to my website, www.deontaycarroll.com, and you can find out more information about me. how to book me, all that other kind of stuff. I want to thank my guest one more time, Ciara Page, for coming on this platform to talk about her mother, talk about her family, her grandfather, the godfather of soul, James Brown. And listen, until next time, I love y'all. Be good. Don't go nowhere, Ciara. Holla at your boy. Happening? This is Deontay Carroll, host of Turn Up the Volume podcast. Listen, do me a favor. If you like this video, do yourself a favor and hit the subscribe button. Also, tap the bell and turn on all of your notifications to see this and more interviews and more shows from my podcast right here on my YouTube page. So y'all hit that like button, tag, share, and subscribe. Y'all be good.